Just recapping the weekend here. It was great to go on the road and beat a top 25 team in Pitt, particularly when we were coming off of a game where we really performed as bad as we probably could have. And so to see the fight and resiliency of our staff and our players and how they worked through that and learned from it, I'm very proud of them. You know, the positives of the game offensively, obviously the finish, the 2-minute drive at the end, minute 30 plus, no timeouts, the way they operated, the poise of Devin Leary, the way the guys caught the football, Thayer on the 4th down conversion, the protection by the linemen against a really good front, the backs and the tight ends. It was a great moment. And there's been a lot of good quarterbacks here, and I think it takes a lot out of a guy on the road against a defense like that to take a team down the field and score a game-winning drive like he did. No offensive turnovers. We were 50% conversion on 3rd and 4th down. When we combined those two down and distances, we were 100% scoring touchdowns in the red zone. We gave up 1 sack to a very good defensive front. I thought individually, Devin played a great game, 300 yards plus, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, and very poised and accurate, gave his receivers and tight ends and backs a chance to catch the ball. Kerry Angeline and Emeka both performed well, catching the football and making big plays. And I thought Dylan Parham was really physical in the run game in this game for us at tight end. And Ricky made some critical runs in short yardage where there wasn't a lot there that helped us stay on the field. And a couple times there was an unblocked player that he just made miss or ran around or ran through. So very pleased with that. Negatives on 3rd down or on offense. We need to continue to improve our short yardage run game. We're making plays, but it's not as clean as it could be. The opening drive of the 3rd quarter, we came out and got 3 and outed, and that's something we want to create momentum in that opportunity. Operationally, I thought as good as Devin was, there were some things in the RPO game that are there for him to take advantage of. And he did at times, just being consistent. But I love the way we battled. I didn't like the procedural penalties. We had 3. I thought our cadence was a weapon in this game, and it beat us 3 times. All 3 of them were at the receiver position, jumping off sides. On defense, in a positive, we stopped the run, less than 100 yards rushing, 2.5 yards a carry. Overcame, a busted coverage the second play of the game. It didn't rattle the guys. I thought they played really well after that series. Held Pitt, really the story of the game was the red zone defense in this game. They were down there 5 times and only got 2 touchdowns. Held them to a goal line stand and potentially would have had another. I thought we stopped them on the 1 sneak. He definitely did not have forward progress, but they ruled it a touchdown. But just really tough when they got down there. Played really well on 3rd down throughout the game. Individually, I thought Levi was very impressive. He played 4 positions in the game for us with what happened to Tyler Baker-Williams being out. Levi had to learn Sam, which he always has, nickel. He played our dime. He also played an extra backer position on the goal line. So I was very proud of Levi in this game. Had some extra effort plays. I thought Malik Dunlap played his best game of his career. He tackled well. He had a big hit on a bubble and a nice tackle on the line of scrimmage early in the game. Drake and Peyton were both very physical and active. I thought Isaiah had some really good plays running through and disrupting things, and really impressed with what Josh Pierre-Louis and Tyon Palmer did, finding out really Friday that they were going to be playing, and they got 1 day of practice as our nickel going into that game, and their leading receiver coming into the game was their slot receiver. So very proud of those 2 young men. On the negative side, defensively, the busted play on play 2 can't happen. I didn't think we aligned well when they went fast tempo to some of their formations and getting that cleaned up. We had to substitute a lot just due to our personnel issues we had with Tyler being out. And twice they broke the huddle with 12 men on the field and were not called for it, which forced us to have to use timeouts in a substitution, and didn't have enough timeouts at the end. And so we ended up with a 12 men on the field penalty. So those are things we've got to do better, but also need the rules to be the rules. I felt like we lost contain on a few unblocked plays off the edge that could have ended drives. One of them was a 4th down where Peyton lost contain, and that would have been a stop. We had 3 costly defensive penalties. A great teachable moment with Josh Pierre-Louis targeted the quarterback, and if he's 6 inches lower on his contact, that's a pick 6, and we're up 24-7. Instead, they stay on the field and get a field goal, so a 10-point swing. We had a 3rd and 16 defensive holding and a DPI. So, some things we got to clean up there. Special teams wise, Chris Dunn continues to be a weapon. Our kickoff, Trent Gill's doing a great job kicking off. I think he'll tell you he had a subpar day as our punter and one he'll get better from. But we just missed some opportunities. We were close to blocking a punt and we were late off the football and missed it by an inch. You've got to be able to just take every inch you can get when you're rushing a punt, and we were short. Dylan Parham gave great effort, just laid off the football. I thought our kickoff return was poor, and we've got to clean that area up. But overall, I'm just super proud of the group, and when you watch the film, it's a game where you feel like you could have won decisively if some things changed, but they didn't, and we stuck together and hung in there, and it's an opportunity to learn from our errors. I think they learned that they got to practice a certain way if they want to play a certain way. And I think that was really good for our guys to have that. We didn't just win the game on Saturday, and the team, we talked about it yesterday. We won that game starting on Monday with their attitude, their performance, and their meetings, the way they practiced with great effort. And now we got to learn from that. You can't let a win on the road get to your head. We can't, at any means, at any time, get a big head because of one thing we did well. And we move on to playing Virginia, who's, as you all know, the Coastal champions from last year. They're a very veteran football team, a lot of seniors and juniors and grad transfers or graduates on their team and their starting lineups. Even where they've lost starters, they're replacing them with 3rd and 4th year players, and that's a tribute to what they've been able to do there in their developmental program, keeping guys from transferring out and staying healthy. But they're very sound. They're big. They remind you of a Big Ten team when you look at how big they are. They're strong. Impressed how they don't beat themselves. They're a low penalized team. They're a team that doesn't give up a lot of plays in their backfield. They've only had 6 plays in their own backfield in 2 games, and obviously Clemson was one of those teams. And they have turned the football over with this new starting quarterback, but they've made up for it with 7 takeaways in 2 games on defense. So, very, very good opponent. Another road game, our 3rd straight in 3 weeks. Offensively, I think, like every offense, things are always going to be about your QB. And when he's playing well, they're playing well. He has turned the football over. He is a tough kid. He's a good runner. He's a good scrambler. I think their receivers bring some different things. They've got some really small, quick guys, and then they've got some really big guys. They have, guys out there that are 5'9" that can really run. You got 6'7" receiver, a 6'7" tight end that are big targets. I think their tailback, number 21, runs really hard. I think he is a tough guy, gets a lot of yards after his first contact. And they got 5 experienced players on the O-line, only giving up 2 sacks a game. On the other side of the football, defensively, very sound, very long guys on the edge, a lot of experience. They're 3-4, and they get into some nickel packages. They do a lot. They do a good job mixing it up. A lot of different coverages, a lot of good disguises, and their kids play hard. They're strong up front. They play with good technique, and they mix, what they do. I think their linebackers are tough kids. Jackson's a young man that we wanted here quite a bit in recruiting. I think he's a really good player. Zandier's been there a while for him at Mike and plays really hard. And I mentioned, Snowden off the edge he's a really good football player. And number 7 on the other side does the same. They'll drop those guys. They'll rush them. Their safety Blount's been in there for a long time, number 29. And they're in the backfield a lot. They've got 7 sacks and 16 TFLs in just 2 games. So very disruptive. When you look at them compared to the teams they've played, they're plus 14 and making plays in the backfield compared to their opponents. So it tells you what they do. and they've only committed 6 total penalties being aggressive like that. So well-coached football team. It's going to be a great challenge, and for us, it's just about getting better. We just got to continue to learn from the last game, keep a big chip on our shoulder, and play harder each week and play smarter each week and take the mistakes off the film that we just had on it. So with that, I'll open it up.
All right, Jonas, go for it.
Hey, Coach, hope all is well. You kind of touched on it a little bit about how different the team looked from Virginia Tech game to the Pitt game, and obviously you guys made adjustments. So some of that was X's and O's, but how much of that was also just pride from the guys wanting to put a better product on the field and come out and perform better?
Yeah, I think they were very humbled in week 2. Virginia Tech did a good job, so you got to give them credit, but I don't think we had the same edge in practice. And I talked about that with the team on that Tuesday of Virginia Tech week. I thought we were sloppy. I didn't think we were the same as we were the Tuesday before preparing for Wake, and that they needed to get their stuff together or they would pay for it. And we did. We just didn't prepare the same way. You got to understand that you're going to play how you practice. And especially when you're talking about young guys, maybe an older player can get away with that, a guy that's got 30 starts, but that's not our roster. And so we have to take every day like it's got to be how I want the game to look. And I think we learned a hard lesson. And you got to credit the leadership on the football team. They said they're not going to have that. It's one thing to lose a game where you play as well as you can play. It's another to go out there and get embarrassed like we did. And so I was proud of those guys. I think there is a lot of pride on this football team when it comes to how we play the game. We talk about wanting to play hard, tough together, and we didn't do that in week 2. I think we definitely responded. I think there was some things schematically that Tony did better with the front to allow them to play a certain way, the backers and our fits, and so that from week 2 to week 3 improved as well.
JB Ricks.
Good morning, Coach. Thank you for taking out the time. I just have a simple question of how is this team built differently when it comes to their mentality and how they approach each game compared to 2019?
Well, I think we have really good leadership on this football team in every position group. And last year, and I've spoken on this, and this isn't to be negative to the 2019 roster. I think those kids wanted to do well. We just had a lot of injured players that were counted on that roster. And so you were asking freshmen to lead, and we just weren't ready in those rooms to do that. And right now you've got veteran leadership in each position group, and I think that really makes a difference. The message doesn't change from the coaches as much as people think. I think the thing that changes is the players hold each other accountable a certain way when they're player-led teams. Every team has coaches that motivate and that coach and detail things. But when your teammates are holding you accountable and writing you and demanding things from you, and the guys that are doing that are also the guys making the plays on game day, not the guys that are in the training room, it's a big difference. And I think you're seeing that right now when we're playing well.
Thank you.
Aaron Beard.
Hey, Dave. Obviously, Devin's been in a very unusual circumstance with what happened and missing workouts and so forth. He obviously felt he had gotten enough done to be ready for a game. Is he all the way caught up, for lack of a better term, or is he still trying to catch up even more from lost reps, even as well as he played this weekend?
No, I think he's always going to be trying to get better. When you're a young player, and I've said this many times, I think there's certain things that happen to you in practice where all of a sudden something clicks. And so that speeds up the curve of how good you can be. And so he's going to be constantly doing that through this season. I mean, he lost spring ball and he lost those days we're talking about. So, for a young quarterback, he's still a redshirt sophomore. But he played really well. He's our starting quarterback, and we're very excited about the growth that we've seen from him in the last 2 weeks. I'm sure you guys see it as well. But, yeah, I mean, you can't ever say that reps don't matter for a guy that's 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. I mean, they're a critical part of their development.
Thanks, Dave.
Corey Smith.
Dave, for Emeka Emezi, Obviously, last season was not the year that he wanted to have in terms of overall stats and things like that. But what did you see from him on Saturday that was different from what he's done in the past? And how excited were you to see him really step up in the wide receiving corps?
Well, I was happy for him, first of all. He's a hard worker, and he expects a lot from himself. And I think he's been making plays. He just hasn't been making game-changing plays this year until Saturday. And so he wants to win. He wants to be part of the reason we are winning. And sometimes, as we all know in our society, people want that the day they want it, And like I told him last week, you could see his frustration is just keep working and good things will happen, Don't be disappointed because you stopped working and then all of a sudden there was your opportunity and you weren't ready for it. And he did that. He just kept working, to his credit, and made some key plays. Devin gave him a chance and he did what he needed to do. And so I was extremely happy for him. And I think it's a great story, for our team. And you talk about that because he's a guy that, 5 catches without a touchdown doesn't make him happy. He wants to score like all good receivers do. And so he's had to keep working to get to that, but it was great to see him have that moment.
Obviously, the offense kind of relied on the running game through the first 2 weeks, seeing how well the wide receivers played in this game and seeing how well Devin was able to distribute the ball around, over 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. How much does that change what this offense is capable of doing now with a little more balance and on both sides?
Yeah, I think it's huge to be able to be balanced, for one. And, I think our offense is built around a lot of things, but when people are going to put 9, 8 guys in the box, you have to throw to win. You have to. And so we showed that we can do that. And so I think it puts more pressure on the defenses we play because we have been able to run the ball efficiently. We have 3 good tailbacks. Our O-line's been physical. So you've got to pick what you want, and now Devin has that confidence. The receivers are catching the ball well. So you hope that continues to allow us to show more balance, as we get into a game plan.
Thank you.
Todd Gibson.
Yeah, Dave, you said the guys practiced better last week. Was it the players taking it upon themselves saying we need to practice better, or did the coaching staff more have to stress to them like, hey, guys, you guys just need to be better? What was that situation like?
I demanded it, but they followed through. And I think that's the biggest thing. It's one thing every week we ask for that, but I think they learned a tough lesson. And sometimes all of us that have children know that you can tell your kids not to do things, and until you catch them doing it and they learn a tough lesson, they don't hear you. And sometimes that's what has to happen. I think the leadership of our team took advantage of the opportunity to come down hard on a bunch of guys and demand some things out of them. And we weren't 100% now. Our roster didn't all play as good as they can play. We've got some guys that got to get a lot better from that performance. But I think overall you saw a big jump in our production and what we can do when we practice better.
Coach, how hard is it for guys to call other players out? And when they do call them out, for those kids to respond in a positive way, how nice is it when they do that? Well,
I think it's how you do it. It's got to be constructive. It can't be personal. And I think we've talked a lot about that. It takes courage for a teammate to tell you something like that. And so you need to understand he's coming to you from a place of love and that he cares and that he wants to win. And, if you're out there playing, that you're supposed to be a trusted player that's going to do the right thing, that you would want the guy next to you to tell you that. And just like if you were the guy doing it right, you wouldn't want to watch a guy do it wrong and no one say anything to him, from a player's standpoint. So I think that's the brotherhood of trust, and you've got to be able to say those things, and you got to do it in the right way. You can't be demeaning, but you can be demanding. And I think our team has gotten better in that area.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Alex Sawyer.
Hey, Dave. Kerry Angeline obviously had 2 touchdowns, and you mentioned Dylan Parham's help in the run game. And, of course, Dylan Ottenreith's always involved in the run game as well. How good is it to have that tight end group playing that well and kind of doing it in all facets of the offense?
Yeah, it's a major part of what we want to be. You have multiple personnel groups. You want to use the talents of those guys when you're out there. And I think to have the physicality on the edge that Dylan is showing us with some of his blocking in our zone game and our stretch game, to see what Carey does vertically. He's a big target, you know. And you got Thayer running down the hash on one side and Carey on the other. I mean, those are two pretty good targets for the quarterback to have in the seams. And he's just very reliable on third down and in the red zone. And DA is just kind of the Swiss Army knife. You know, he just goes wherever we need him and does things right, and plays hard, and does a lot of things behind the scenes with his group to help them get better.
Jonas?
Coach, coaches are constantly preaching about staying ready, and you never know when your opportunity might come, and next man up mentality. Against Pitt, Josh Harris hadn't played much this year, and he comes in and helps out with a big goal line stand, and Boykins comes in late and gets a big stop. How much easier is it to preach that message when you have examples on the field like Josh and Boykin, to preach it throughout practice to the rest of the team?
Yeah, no, I think those things bring the stories to life. You know, Tyon Palmer, Josh Pierre-Louis, Devin Boykin. Earlier in the year, it was Ashford playing for Tanner. Josh Harris was in our goal line package the last 2 weeks, and obviously you got to see it this weekend with him and Aleem and C.J. Clark in the middle. Those are three big, stout guys that are tough, and so it was great for Josh to get on the field. You know, he had an injury a year ago, and he's trying to get some weight off still, but he plays hard in there, and he's a big guy. He's hard to move, and made a great play on the one run. So, you know, that's awesome. And in this COVID 2020, 2019, whatever we're calling it, everybody has to be ready. I mean, everybody. Because it can happen 3 times a week. You get tested. At any moment, you could have one happen.
Had those guys, I mean, even though they weren't getting the snaps, was their practice habits, had they changed? Were they still just, you know, going at it 100% every week, even though they weren't getting many snaps? Yeah.
You know, Josh has been down on the scout team going against Grant Gibson every snap, and he goes hard every day. And so he is getting better. He's getting his conditioning the way we want it, and that's how he earned a spot on that unit, you know, on our goal line package. So that's where he got it. And Tyon Palmer, we've been repping and trying, you know, he had an ACL a year ago, so we were trying to get him back to game speed, and actually going into this game had earned a couple starting spots on special teams. And so we were seeing his improvement. It just happened that all of a sudden he was called in there, and I mean, what a play he made in the end zone. They ran the slot fade and perfect coverage, great timing, good pass breakup. So it's really good to see that for Tyon.
Jared?
Dave, not to steal Jonas's thunder because he was the one who researched this stat, but the last 3 times you have beaten a top 25 ranked team, there has not been a letdown the following week. Is that something that is cognizantly discussed during practice to avoid a letdown, or is that just something that you let slide and don't bring up?
You know, it's funny, like, we don't ever let up. You don't. I mean, what you have to do is look at your team, and every team's different. You know, you have a veteran team, they're going to handle a win or a loss different than a young team. And you have a team that's not very well led by players. It's all coach led. In this situation, we have a real time example of winning a game, thinking that we're all that, getting destroyed the following week, and now winning another tough game. I think our guys know that they can't step back. I mean, the chip on our shoulder has to grow. And so that's the best thing that's happened. And I said that after we lost the weight game. You know, it's a loss, but it's only a loss for the season if we don't learn from it. And I think we learned a lot from that game with Virginia Tech, and it helped us beat Pitt. And so now we've got to use that lesson of how we prepared going into that Virginia Tech game and not let it happen again to play a really good Virginia team.